Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share, and restack buttons. Well, drone swarms are coming quickly. Today we're going to talk about why that is. We're going to talk about why you should care about drone swarms, why it's a big deal that they're coming quickly. And we're going to talk about how they relate to Bible prophecy. That's probably the most important thing we're going to talk about here. So let's start with this right here. So this is a video that Scott Townsend forwarded to me a few days ago. I'm not going to play the video, but I'll pin it at the top of the comments so you can go watch it if you want. It's about a number of stories related to AI, specifically OpenAI Development Day in London. And in the opening part of this video, they show AI or OpenAI controlling a drone and using the code that it wrote to control the drone. So the AI created the code and then used the code to control the drone. This is why drone swarms are coming quickly, because it's not just a matter of human beings developing these technologies. It's that artificial intelligence is going to be helping to create these breakthroughs in how the drones are used. And this is a big deal, the emergence of drone swarms. It completely changes the balance of power in the entire world. Now, believe me, let's take a look at this article right here. So this is from the Kiev Post. It's titled Ukraine's Global Voice, or at least that's what the Kiev Post has as their byline. The article is titled AI Raises Ukrainian Drone Kill Rates to 80%. So let's scroll down and see what this has to say. It says, in a recent article for the Henry Jackson Society, an extract of which was published by Kiev Post on Sunday, October 13th, David Kirinchenko drew attention to the increasingly significant role AI is playing on the battlefield in the war in Ukraine, particularly in enhancing the ability of drones to target the enemy. And guys, from day one, we've talked about, from day one of the Ukraine-Russia war, we've talked about why this is a big deal, because the battlefield is a staging ground where your incentives to develop these weapons on a battlefield are much greater than they are during peacetime. According to articles in Time magazine and the UK's Forces News Military, the leap forward that AI has provided Ukrainian drones has increased their hit rate from below 50% in 2023 to near 80% this year. Much of this is put down to the impact of AI software provided by the US-based company Palantir, who Time has dubbed the AI arms dealer of the 21st century. Guys, no doubt about it, Palantir is part of the US deep state. Let's put it that way. They're part of the national security state, the military industrial complex of the United States. So as an example of the technology's success is the Saker reconnaissance drone, in which Palantir's AI software is embedded. The drone is said to be able to independently identify personnel, tanks, armored vehicles, among other targets, and feed that information to its command post to select when to hit the enemy and with what weapons. However, the critical edge comes from the ability of AI to, quote, learn, and for Ukrainian operators to, quote, train the software further so that Saker can now distinguish between Russian soldiers simply by their uniforms, their weapons and equipment, and even by the way they move after being fed countless videos of Russian operational forces. The Saker has a range of 10 kilometers and an inertial guidance system which doesn't rely on GPS for navigation, making it far less susceptible to jamming. So we hear a lot about drone swarms, they're susceptible to jamming, these other issues, they're overcoming all of that. Over the last 12 months, the increase in electronic warfare countermeasures on the battlefield has heavily impacted the successful strike rate by drones. Field reports said that for newly qualified UAV pilots, the hit rate became as low as 10%, while even the most experienced operators were struggling to achieve a 50% success rate. However, with the advent of Palantir's AI, which according to the Forces News report is used to power nearly all of Ukraine's drones used for artillery targeting, this can be raised to closer to 80%. The Palantir software is designed to collate data gathered by a number of sources, including human intelligence, drones, radar, thermal imaging, and so on, that can detect movement on the battlefield and the sources of artillery fire. Palantir's AI modeling then processes the data and will offer a variety of targeting options for commanders to exploit. Kirinchenko says AI-equipped drones are, quote, leveraging technology to counter both Russia's superior personnel numbers and larger quantities of systems and weapons. He believes that in doing so, quote, Ukraine has really defied the narrative that a much bigger power will overwhelm a much smaller nation. So guys, that is the power of swarms and why this is a big deal, because with swarm technology, a much smaller nation can counter the conventional military forces of a much larger nation traditionally, looking at the post-World War II era. And this is very destabilizing. We've talked about this before in the overturn of mutual assured destruction. But guys, we're seeing AI being incorporated into swarms, which is the next step. And as that process takes over, that's when we're going to get to a point where MAD will be overturned. We're going to see a global war. And I believe the Bible teaches in the aftermath of that global war is when we see the global empire, talked about in the books of Daniel and Revelation, rise, come to the scene, come onto the world scene. So let's look at this article right here from the Christian Science Monitor. It says why military drone swarms raise ethical concerns in future wars. And this has a piece in it about, well, what makes a swarm? And this is where AI writing code for drones is why these swarms are coming quickly. It says current instances of uncrewed military group attacks over battlefields, as well as the drone light shows now popping up as entertainment in night skies over the U.S. You see these at, national celebrations all over the world for several years now. I remember 2018, I believe, at the Winter Olympic Games, the opening ceremonies had one of these big drone shows. But it says those are not intelligent swarms. So keep in mind, those are hobbyist drones with lights on them that have just been pre-coded. They've been programmed to fly in unison the way they do. So that's not a swarm, is what we're talking about here. It says the former are essentially salvos of slow-moving aerial missiles, each one operated by a human with no machine-to-machine coordination or communication. The latter, a high-tech alternative to fireworks, are reprogrammed displays in near-ideal conditions which aren't particularly useful in a military setting, since an adversary can figure out how to counter them. For an enemy, that just means I've got a pattern of things I can shoot at, or they're operating similarly, so it's easier to predict what they're going to do, notes Brian Clark, senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. Swarms instead use an array of sensors to communicate drone to drone, and then switch to AI to plan and collaborate for attacks on the fly. They're programmed to create a siege of overwhelming force from, quote, a bunch of different angles. The way ants crawl over a beetle or whatever to eat it, says Zachary Kallenborn, a fellow at George Mason University's SCAR School of Policy and Government. A big challenge for current drone operators in Ukraine's battlefields is Russian jamming technology, which can prevent operator drone and thus drone-to-drone communication. To address this challenge, some researchers are working on ways for drones to observe and infer what other drones are doing. The fog of war complicates visual observation. That's why Theodore Pavlik of Arizona State University recently began studying weaver ants in Australia at the behest of U.S. Special Operations Command. As the ants swarm and transport their prey up trees, they sense each other's presence without constantly looking around. They also cooperate and make decisions as a team. If we can replicate that with drones, you can basically hit go, and they will plan their own way, says Dr. Pavlik. So in other words, you can say, take out that target, and the swarm will go do it. Says Dr. Pavlik, who also studies stingless bees and other types of ants. If new challenges occur, then they can set temporary short-term goals to get around those challenges. In other words, they'll adapt on the battlefield in real time. And this is why we talked about this. Swarms are so difficult to defend against, especially as AI gets incorporated into true swarms, because a lot of the swarms we're seeing on the battlefield in Russia-Ukraine war are really just multiple drones controlled by a human being. They're not independently operating. They're not communicating with each other. There's usually what they call a mother drone overseeing all the other drones. And so if you take that one out, you render all the others useless, whereas in a true swarm, you could take out half the swarm, the other swarm's going to regroup and continue to go after the target, just as they're saying here. So think of a true swarm of bees and how you can take out half of that swarm. The others aren't just going to fall to the ground rendered useless. They're going to continue to go after the target. And that's why this is so difficult to defend against. And they'll learn and they'll adapt themselves to account for any countermeasures or defensive measures that are put out in the battlefield. But let's check out this article as well. This is from Wired. It says Anduril is building out the Pentagon's dream of deadly drone swarms. So this is from back in May. I'm not going to read all this. I'm going to pick a few of the interesting points out of this. Starting with this one, it says that business model has seen Anduril focus on showing that it can rapidly deliver drones, submarines, and other hardware infused with advanced software at relatively low cost. It also reflects a shift in America's warfighting outlook toward quicker development of less expensive systems that feature more software and autonomy. We've talked about this a number of times. This is how military forces are changing around the globe. You don't want to invest 10 years developing prototypes of a large piece of equipment. We're seeing those things taken out on the battlefield in Ukraine very quickly. Instead, you want to invest in software, and particularly AI and autonomous systems that can operate independently, where you simply pick a target and they learn and they go after that target and overwhelm that target. And you want to be able to create the hardware very quickly at relatively low cost to rapidly deliver. So this is where, we'll talk about this maybe more in just a moment, it's where molecular manufacturing is really the game changer that will give whatever nation or group of nations that develops it an overwhelming advantage over the entire world militarily, because it will give whoever has it that ability to rapidly deliver in real time on the battlefield swarm after swarm after swarm. There's no, well, we're going to wait 6 months for that manufacturing facility to deliver these. Nope. It'll happen in real time on the battlefield if necessary. And that's what makes it so dangerous. So let's roll back down here. It says the CCA, I believe this is collaborative. Well, let me see. Let's go back up and see. See, collaborative combat aircraft. So that's what they're using CCA for. It says the collaborative combat aircraft represents a move towards swarms, or at least larger numbers of uncrewed systems. As a tactic, swarming could potentially allow smaller, cheaper drones to overcome more expensive systems. It could be a game-changing asymmetric capability. So we're already seeing drones dominate the battlefield in Ukraine. All of this conventional hardware that really the United States has built up post World War II, even post Cold War, is useless in the face of drone swarms. We're already seeing struggle against today's drones, which are really rudimentary and crude in comparison to what's quickly coming as AI is incorporated into these drones. But these drone swarms, again, they'll be able to pick a target, hey, take out that tank, and just a swarm of 100, 200, 300 of these things can swarm in and take it out and learn in real time what are the defenses that are being deployed against the swarm. How can it adapt to those defenses? How can it counter those defenses? It says the U.S. pioneered use of military drones, which have become a priority for armed forces around the world. But Daniel Gerstein, a senior policy researcher at the think tank RAND Corporation and co-author of a report published in February that warns swarms of drones could threaten U.S. power, and they are. We're already seeing these early rudimentary drones have threatened and basically eliminated U.S. conventional power in the Red Sea. The Red Sea has been, we're coming up on 1 year that the Houthi rebels have controlled the Red Sea, even though the United States vowed they would open it back up to freely navigable world trade. They failed to do that, and the drones are going to get more sophisticated. The old school conventional military hardware is not. It says the war in Ukraine has sparked new interest in nimbler forms of autonomy worldwide. Military planners are getting really serious about unmanned, Gerstein says, because the availability of cheaper autonomous systems is upsetting the balance of power in warfare. Again, where a band of rebels in Yemen can take down what was considered the great military power of the world. Drones are here, and we've got to do something about them. It says Ukraine has also been a test bed for attacks using multiple drones working together in so-called swarms, which by weight of numbers can be difficult for air defense systems to track or attack. Both sides have developed or have deployed dozens of relatively small drones at a time, most likely still operated by human controllers. But the United States and others are counting on more sophisticated AI to make it possible for even larger numbers of drones to collaborate in sophisticated ways. The Pentagon's vision for U.S. drone swarms would eventually see them making decisions during a mission both individually and collectively with little or no human input. So that's a big difference between what we see today, where these drones are typically controlled directly by a human being off-site somewhere. Here, they would be autonomous. You'd simply set the mission, and they go. You will have communications and artificial intelligence mechanisms operating on all the parts of the swarm, Gerstein says. You could go to a target, select the target, and if they saw that they were under attack, they could change their flight path. So here we're seeing this drive to develop swarms, drone swarms, that act autonomously on the battlefield, that learn on the battlefield, that adapt on the battlefield. And this is a huge game changer. Again, it means all conventional weapon systems are obsolete. It's now all about swarms. What isn't obsolete at the moment is the deterrent nuclear capability of the United States, Russia, China, Israel, UK, France, other nuclear powers, especially underwater. But with molecular manufacturing, that will change because it will become cost effective and you will be able to manufacture these. You will be capable of manufacturing these and doing so cost effectively and deploying them underwater in the world's oceans, where they could track every nuclear submarine. And that's when MAD gets overturned. But let's read more from this article in the Kiev Post. So we'll go back to the same paper, different article. This one says Germany successfully trials AI-controlled drone swarm. Next stop, Ukraine. It says on Tuesday, Quantum Systems announced that the consortium had made a major breakthrough after it had successfully flown an AI-controlled drone swarm made up of 4 different types of drone at the Airbus Drone Center in Manching, Bavaria. The statement said, for the first time, a specially developed mission AI controls and coordinates the UAV systems to ensure reliable mission execution, even in scenarios with radio interference or a complete failure of individual drones. So again, the swarm can operate independently of radio contact or communication with a master drone, so to speak. It says the test was the culmination of the year-long development of the concept. The team's first task was to train the AI using trial and error deep reinforcement learning based on Google's DeepMind, which allowed the system to refine its tactical processes through continuous self-optimization, they said. After a series of tests in a simulated environment, the AI took to the skies in June when Quantum tested a swarm of its own Vector and Scorpion UAVs in flight for the first time. Several different types of mission profile were tested that included reconnaissance and target acquisition tasks integrated with a representative battle management system. The tests were also carried out under simulated difficult operational conditions that included artificially denying the drones access to global navigation satellite systems and imposing radio interference conditions similar to those witnessed on the battlefield in Ukraine. The August test served as a customer demonstration and went further than the earlier test. The swarm was made up of a combination of 2 types of unnamed multi-purpose Airbus drones with the Quantum Systems Vector and Scorpion UAVs. During the flight, some of which again were carried out under GNSS denial and radio interference conditions, the separate data feeds produced by the drones were merged in real time to generate a single battlefield picture, which was then fed into the Airbus Joint Command and Control Battle Management System. So basically this battlefield picture is being taken in by the swarm rather than by a single point of view camera. And so this is a true swarm with a hive mindset. It says Vector also proved capable of autonomous reconnaissance and target acquisition when GPS is jammed, a big problem for Ukraine's military drones. Sven Kruk, Quantum Systems Managing Director, said the success of the trials had demonstrated AI's potential to increase drone resilience, and he anticipated the technology would now rapidly develop and the tactics for their use would very quickly evolve. It's about protecting soldiers and increasing safety, he said. In the future, there will be no way around software-based AI or software-based and AI-supported systems for drone technology. And so what he's saying here, it's about protecting soldiers and increasing safety. The incentive is there to use AI to create these systems for which there is no way around them. Where else do we hear that? Well, it reminds me of this right here from Revelation chapter 13, verse 4. It says, they worship the dragon for giving the beast such power, and they also worship the beast. Who is as great as the beast, they exclaimed. Who is able to fight against him? So we know in the end times, people will say this about the Antichrist. His military forces will conquer the entire globe. The entire globe will be conquered at that point. What we're seeing emerge right now on the battlefield in Russia, Ukraine is the forerunner to the technology that could overcome MAD and lead to this exact scenario, which we read about in Revelation chapter 6, verses 3 through 4. This says, when the Lamb broke the second seal, I heard the second living being say, come. Then another horse appeared, a red one. Its rider was given a mighty sword and the authority to take peace from the earth. And there was war and slaughter everywhere. So while conventional wisdom says there won't be a World War III, there will never be another global war because it would mean the end of the human race. It would be catastrophic, existential in nature. Everyone would be destroyed. The Bible tells us that is not the case. It talks specifically about another global war with war and slaughter everywhere, and yet the human race survives that. In the aftermath of that, we have a global empire. Read about that in Revelation chapter 13, verse 7, where it says, and the beast was allowed to wage war against God's holy people, and to conquer them, he was given authority to rule over every tribe and people and language and nation. So we see this global empire where people say, who is as great as the beast? Who is able to fight against him? We see these weapons emerging right now in our day and time, the types of weapons that would allow for this exact scenario to play out. It would also lead to this scenario in the Gog of Magog war that we read about in Ezekiel chapters 38 through 39. Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 9 says, you and all your allies, talking about Gog and his hordes, a vast and awesome army, will roll down on them like a storm and cover the land like a cloud. John Haller's pointed this out a number of times. Well, the visualization of covering the land like a cloud is exactly what we would see when we look at drone swarms. Think of visual images of swarms of locusts coming over the land or giant swarms of bees. That is a picture of often mistaken for clouds. When people see them often in the distance coming, they think, what is that black cloud off in the distance? It's a swarm headed that way. And so, guys, this is the type of warfare we're seeing emerge right now in our day and time. AI is accelerating this. It's being incorporated into drones right now and into drone swarms that will act in much different ways than the drones we see on the battlefield today. When we're talking about drones, we're not talking about essentially these large planes that we've seen for 15, 20 years now in various theaters of battle. Talking about much smaller, compact drones, maybe the size of the hobbyist drones that people use that act in coordination. Those drones are going to get smaller. They're going to have a longer battery life, more power. They're going to be able to cover greater distances. We'll have smaller, faster drones that can act as motherships for those and escort those drones to a certain point in the battlefield and then release them. And these swarms will be unstoppable because, as they talked about in these previous articles, it'll be like ants covering a beetle or bees covering some prey that they're attacking. So guys, this is where we're headed with military conflict and war fighting. It's going to happen very quickly, relatively speaking. I'm not saying this happens tomorrow, but we're not talking 100 years from now. We're talking a very short time frame where these things are going to develop, and this will become the primary method of war fighting. As mentioned in these articles, the geopolitical balance of power completely changes. The United States would, if it cannot adapt to the degree that other nations adapt, it will not be the world's dominant military power. The Bible tells us it won't be. There's no mention of the United States in end times Bible prophecy. So some other nation or group of nations is going to be developing this. All these other nations today are developing this. But again, the key to all of this, I believe, is molecular manufacturing. Whoever has that breakthrough in that area will be able to build drone swarms on a scale that no other nation can, and would be able to overwhelm not only the conventional military capabilities of every nation on the earth today, but also the nuclear capabilities of every nation on earth today. And they will have to use that advantage to establish a global empire, lest a competing power rise and you have a catastrophic war that ends all life on Earth. So guys, the trends we're seeing in technology paint a picture of a future world that is the exact same thing we read about in the Bible. And that tells me we're getting close to the tribulation period. We're getting close to seeing these end times events foretold in the Bible play out in our day and time. Guys, that means Jesus is coming. He's coming back at the end of the 7-year tribulation, but he's also coming back before the tribulation for his church in the rapture. So what do you think? Leave your comments below. But guys, this is just another sign we're seeing play out in the daily headlines that's pointing to the soon return of Jesus Christ. So again, let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit the like, share, subscribe, restack buttons. God willing, I will see you on Friday. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to visit my Substack at brittgillette.substack.com. There you'll find my latest videos and articles, as well as notes, where I share the latest news headlines, the articles I'm reading, and the videos I'm watching. Subscribe for free, and each new post on Substack will be sent directly to your email. Just scroll to the bottom of the homepage and hit the subscribe button. As an added bonus, your first welcome email will include a link to a copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt Gillette on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.